The government's most important mission is to build and sustain an inclusive Singapore, said Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Finance and Manpower, Tharman Shanmugaratnam, at a ministerial forum organised by the National University of Singapore's Students' Political Association on Wednesday.
Our major project is to create an inclusive Singapore. That's our major project. It's a lot of things, economic policies, social policies, and it's not a one-time job. It's continuous work. For any society, and certainly for us in Singapore, it's continuous work, but it's an extremely important project. And if you look at this year's budget, if you look at what we've been doing in the last few years, this is now our most important mission as government, to build and sustain an inclusive Singapore. And when we first think about it, you think it's about social policy, and a lot of it is about social policy, but it's also economic policy, and it's very hard to distinguish clearly between economic policy and social policy in Singapore, because our economic policies do not merely have economic aims. It's not just about economic growth. It's about growing in a way that helps everyone to do better and have a better life. In other words, it's about growing the pie so that all Singaporeans can have a fair share of a larger pie.
Elaborating on the kind of inclusive society that the government is aiming to build, Mr. Tharman said that any social policy that the government takes into consideration is also evaluated on the impact it has on other aspects of society.
Yes, we have social policies which are specifically aimed at helping the elderly, helping the disabled, helping the poor. But it's also about social policies that keep a sense of aspiration in our society, that ensure that we don't lose our drive as a society. And that too is critical for economic growth, critical for growing the pie. So economic and social policies are really very tightly bound together.
Mr. Tharman said that any social policy implemented now must be sustainable and should not affect the next generation of Singaporeans.
If you look at Europe, in fact, it's in many ways a very attractive set of social policies. Health provisions, pension provisions, but it has a very serious flaw, and that is that their systems are not sustainable. Whatever we do in Singapore, we need to do more for the elderly. We need to step up social policies, but make sure it's sustainable. Make sure that when we talk about a fair and inclusive society, it's not just for 5 years or 2 or 3 electoral terms, but it's about a fair and inclusive society for our children's generation and for their children. That too has to be what is special about our society, that we think hard about our children and want to make sure that whatever we do, we don't increase the burden on future generations.
The annual Kent Ridge Ministerial Forum was attended by some 200 NUS students. During the 2-hour dialogue, DPM Tharman also fielded questions on topics ranging from the budget to social equality and underprivileged groups in Singapore. Watch our other clips to find out more.